Rob. If the president's done nothing wrong, then they should allow us to see their personal bank record. I mean, you've seen the emails that showed that Hunter Biden was complaining to his daughter that he had to give half of his income to his father.
Right.
That's pretty damning evidence.
Yeah.
When his income 100% came from our adversaries around the world for influence peddling, for violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And his dad, now we know, was on the phone call with all 20 of these people that sent the Biden family these millions of dollars. So Joe Biden has been implicated. And if there's nothing to hide, then they should be transparent with us with their financial records and stop obstructing and intimidating our witnesses and blocking us from more bank records.
So there's Representative Comer talking about, his words, damning evidence against Hunter Biden and everything that we continue to learn. Like I said, it's an SNL skit of all of the most obvious pieces of evidence that are mounting up, and everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about. One of the people who's like, I don't know what you're talking about, happens to be the president himself.
There's this testimony now where one of your son's former business associates is claiming that you were on speakerphone a lot with them talking business. Is that what?
I never talk business in anybody. And I know you'd have a lousy question.
Well, why is that a lousy question?
Because it's not true.
The United States.
More perfect.
Your form of our perfect union.
Heritage legal expert Hans von Spakovsky.
Hans, welcome back to the Annie Frey Show. It feels like yesterday that we were talking.
It does. And I have to say, it's not as much fun talking to you on the phone as it was talking to you in the studio yesterday.
Well, you have a microphone and a chair to come back anytime you are in the area. This clip here between Peter Doocy and Joe Biden happened in the midst of yesterday, and where Joe Biden says, I knew you'd ask a lousy question. I told Brad, I go, I'm going to need that for future purposes in my line of business. That's a hilarious audio drop. But is that a lousy question that Peter Doocy was asking the president of the United States about what he did and knew?
It is not a lousy question because we have serious allegations of and evidence of corruption. He keeps saying, Joe Biden keeps saying, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't talk to Hunter Biden about his business, or I didn't talk to any of his clients. That is just an outright lie. I mean, we have not only email communications indicating that happened, but we have other evidence, including the testimony of Hunter Biden's former partner, Devon Archer, and other things like clear evidence that Joe Biden went to have lunch at the Cafe Milano. Folks who don't know that, Cafe Milano is this very fancy place in Washington, D.C., and it's one of those power restaurants, right? You know, all the politicians in town go there, and the evidence is overwhelming that the vice president went there to have lunch with Hunter Biden when he was meeting with these Russian oligarchs, the ones who, in the latest disclosure from Chairman Comer, Joe Biden and his partners made $20 million from Burisma and these Russian oligarchs. $20 million.
Let me ask you this, Hans. You take the body of evidence that we have so far. Are there any more famous or even less famous scenarios that are similar to what the Biden family here is being accused of that we've experienced before, and we know how those stories ended, this type of inappropriate relationship with people across the globe?
I cannot remember a single instance before of claims about a vice president of the United States that his family selling access to him. Now, we did have accusations about Bill Clinton essentially renting out the Lincoln bedroom and access to the White House in order to get campaign donations. But here, it's not allegations of campaign contributions. It's allegations of directly profiting. And look, here's the other thing about this. I actually looked this up just a little while ago, Annie. I went to the website of the Department of Justice, and I went to the office that prosecutes violations of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And for folks who don't know it, in essence, if you're representing a foreign entity, whether it's a government or a company, you have to register as an agent of that foreign company. And if you don't, the penalty maximum is 5 years in jail and $250,000 fine. Listen, in the last 5 years, the Justice Department has prosecuted and successfully convicted 4 different individuals and entities, including a law firm, for violating FARA when they were representing Ukrainian companies, political parties, and others. Prominently not in that list is Hunter Biden. And the evidence is, like I said, it's just overwhelming that he was violating that law, and yet they've done nothing about it.
So to me, it seems as though a lot of these news stories come out. There's so much political sensationalism in the way many stories in general are talked about, because there's such information is such a commodity these days, with the ability of the internet to put things out, to get headlines that people will click on, and so on and so forth. And it seems to me like a lot of times there are headlines that suggest one thing, and then you get to the substance of it, and it seems like you're trying to tie these 2 strings together to make a knot and connect everything, and the strings just don't reach one another to make the knot that connects the full rope. And I look at what's going on and what's coming out with Hunter Biden, what Comer and the investigators, the representatives on the committees in the House have been able to pull out of people about how there's been a ton of suspicion by our Justice Department, by the FBI, the IRS. There have been people who have suspected nefarious behavior on Hunter Biden's part, that the actual idea of being able to tie those 2 strings together to connect it to Joe Biden has been the big thing that we needed to slow everything down, so there's at least enough of a gap where they cannot connect. I'm wondering how big you think that gap is right now, if those 2 pieces aren't able to connect quite yet.
Oh, I think they've gotten overwhelming circumstantial evidence and evidence of witnesses sufficient that if Joe Biden wasn't the president of the United States, the FBI, if it was actually doing its job, would have long ago hauled him in for an interview under oath to get him to defend himself and try to explain all this circumstantial evidence and all these connections. And I can pretty much guarantee you that would have happened with any other family. The fact that it hasn't with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden tells you a lot about how the FBI and the Justice Department are refusing to investigate this. And, Chairman Comer, like I said, if it was anybody else, they'd be able to subpoena Joe Biden if he wasn't president of the United States and get him in and try to force him to answer this. And I know exactly what he would do, what Joe Biden would do if he was in front of a congressional committee being asked this question. He would not answer the questions. In fact, he would assert his Fifth Amendment right against saying anything that could result in a criminal indictment. That's what his lawyers would tell him to do, because he would be facing criminal prosecution because of the, like I said, there's just overwhelming circumstantial evidence on it. And folks in the mainstream media and others say there's nothing here. They're not looking at the evidence. This latest disclosure by Comer is detailed, even having screenshots of the emails. So, and they've got the bank records. So don't tell me there's nothing here. That just means you haven't reviewed the evidence.
We're speaking with Hans von Spakovsky. He's a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, a friend of the show. When I think back to somebody who's been in a position of bringing America's attention to a very high-profile case like this, I think of Adam Schiff, and I think of the cameras. The most dangerous place you could be is between Adam Schiff and a camera, because he will run you over on the way to get to the lens. But how many times were the American people been like, just wait until you know what I know. Just wait until you see what I've seen. And, well, it's August 10th, 2023, and I'm still waiting for Congressman Schiff to put up or shut up about Russia collusion and everything that we were force-fed, where we were basically told, trust me, I got this. I know what I need to know, and this is really bad. When I see Comer doing it, I'm wondering why the Democrats wouldn't go, well, put up or shut up and let me see. Is it the same? Adam Schiff, Comer, same detail, same stuff, different day?
Well, the difference is that Schiff didn't actually put up anything, and in fact, it turned out that all his claims were a complete and total hoax. I mean, that's the result of both the Inspector General's report of the Justice Department and John Durham's report say it was a complete and total hoax. On the other hand, Chairman Comer has been he's been putting up what he's been talking about, and his latest report where he's releasing, like I said, screenshots of emails and the bank records, he's actually putting up the evidence so you can see for yourself that there is something to this.
Let me ask you this question from a listener, Hans, because as they're listening to this conversation, I know that this person is a dedicated fan of the show and on the other side of the aisle from us. But he wants me to ask you, if money was coming in to the Bidens, what did Hunter do for Burisma? What did Joe Biden do for Burisma? What kind of things were turned over that the American taxpayer should be concerned about? Is that evidence even really there?
Well, keep this in mind. Hunter Biden was a lawyer, but he has absolutely zero experience in the energy field. And yet Burisma, which was a Ukrainian energy company, was paying him millions of dollars to be on their board. Now, if you have absolutely no experience in the energy industry and you're on the board of a company that is in the energy industry and you're not providing legal work for him because he wasn't doing that, what could he possibly be being paid that money for? And it's very clear from the emails that he was being paid for access to his father, who was the vice president at the time. And that brings up the whole issue of a government official engaging in actions that are not intended to benefit the people of the United States and the U.S. government, but are intended to benefit his personal family. And all you need is one example of this, and that is Joe Biden, as vice president, bragged about the fact that he told the Ukrainian government that the U.S. would withhold $1 billion in aid unless they fired a Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating who? Burisma, the company his son sat on. Now, when have you ever heard of a vice president of the United States being concerned over what a local prosecutor is doing in some foreign company? He has never explained why he made such a big deal about that. And if that doesn't smack of corruption, I don't know what does.
Do you think that the Joe Biden moment, he's sitting on that stage on a panel and he's regaling his audience with his tales of getting this prosecutor fired, and he's bragging. He's really dipping into the arrogance of ego, where in his famous line, "Son of a witch," a little bit of an edit there. Right. They followed through on what his demands were. Was that a mistake on Joe Biden's part? If he was guilty of what a lot of this evidence is coming back to suggest that he might be guilty of, did he get too braggadocious in that moment?
Yeah, he did. But Joe Biden suffers from something. Look, I've been in Washington for more than 2 decades, and Joe Biden suffers from something that you find with people who have held high positions in this town, and I don't care whether they're Republican or a Democrat. People are so deferential to them that after a while they think that the normal rules don't apply to them and that they can get away with anything. And I think that's part of what was going on here. Keep in mind another thing that just happened on this very issue. The Justice Department in July filed charges against a guy named Gal Luft for violation, again, of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. Why? Because he was paid $700,000 for representing a Chinese energy company called CFC and he didn't register over it. That is the very same company that paid Hunter Biden $3 million to also represent them. And yet the Justice Department files against Gal Luft and hasn't filed against Hunter Biden. What does that tell you about the way the Justice Department is operating?
That is Donald Trump's fault. I don't know. Somehow or another, it's going to come back on him, it feels like. Well, Hans, we're grateful for your time as always. Thank you so much for coming to our town, being able to exit the Beltway there a little bit in Washington, D.C., and coming to St. Louis. We loved having you. It's tons of positive feedback. Everybody is so grateful for your time, and we certainly are as well.
Well, I enjoyed it a lot, and it's always great talking to you and your audience.
Thank you so much. Hans, we'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, former DOJ lawyer. Was talking last night how he did 4 years in the Department of Justice. It is always funny to listen to him talk about it because he kind of talks about it like it was prison. I did 4 years. I did not do 4 years. Hans is wonderful, and we were very, very grateful for the opportunity to host him last night. Such a good event.